Hey everyone, welcome back and happy Halloween. I know I'm dressed as if I'm going to talk about a different franchise, but I am, in fact, talking about Halloween. I'm not going to go through every little bit of detail, do a deep dive, nothing like that. I'm going to keep it pretty basic, simple, and just talk about things that I like and why they're ranked the way that they are. We have 13 films, starting with unlucky number 13, and that is 2002's Halloween Resurrection. This one takes place 3 years after the Hillcrest Academy murders. Laurie is institutionalized, and in this new one, we follow 6 college students who win a competition to be part of an internet reality show called Dangertainment, hosted by Busta Rhymes. This one, I gave it a half a star out of 5. Ironically, this was one of my favorites growing up. Like when this came out, when this became available at Blockbuster and my mom allowed me to rent it, and I was thinking I was the coolest kid showing it off to my friends, like, this is the best Halloween movie yet. No. Out of all 13 films that I rewatched, this was the only one that I didn't complete. This one felt so far off from a Halloween film. Things that I did not like about this film would have to be the mask. The characters are abysmal, and the dialogue, my God, the way that they're written is just... It's... Oh, God. It was like the thought process when everybody's reading through the script, like, okay, yeah, Busta Rhymes doing Kung Fu, which is not even the worst part, by the way. Even the kills are just lackluster. There's nothing really of value, and I know a lot of people enjoy it and they can have a good laugh, and I've had a few laughs. The only part of this film that even makes me laugh is Busta Rhymes when he's dressed as Michael Myers, and then Michael Myers, the real Michael Myers, sneaks up behind him, and yeah, that whole interaction. But aside from that, my God, the dumbest characters in this franchise, like the dumbest decisions made, no thought process whatsoever. There's honestly a lot more negatives than positives. For example, killing Laurie off, the opening titles, the font that's used, it just looks so cheap. I know I'm going hard. Okay, I'm not going to keep dragging Resurrection through the mud. I mean, you get it. You get it. So on to number 12, which has a 2 out of 5 star rating from me personally, and that's going to be Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. So this one takes place, of course, after the events of Halloween 4, and we follow Jamie Lloyd, the daughter of Laurie Strode, who is hospitalized, who's at a children's hospital and is mute in this one, and Michael is comatose after the events of the previous film. This one is the Cult of Thorn timeline. This is absolutely funny to me because this was my other favorite growing up as a kid. I loved Halloween 5, but rewatching it as an adult, again, it's just like, you love that. Wow, that's so interesting. I'm really dragging myself and I don't care. Now, unlike Halloween Resurrection, I do think Halloween 5 does have its merits. Danielle Harris carries the entire film. Her performance at that early of an age is just top tier scream queen. And then on top of that, we have I'm laughing because I do think it's funny. We have Loomis, who's just loony as all hell in this movie, to the point where it's like a little bit uncomfortable watching because he's getting really abusive and pushy with Jamie Lloyd. We've got some great action shots and chase scenes going on. For example, when Michael is gunning down Jamie through the field and we get that perspective from the vehicle. I thought that was really great, as well as the trash chute scene. That was pretty tense. Then something I forgot to mention is the opening credits, which is by far one of my favorites of any of the films. Even Michael's side weapons, the use of the mowing scythe, is one of my big likes of the movie. However, I do feel like the violence is kind of tamed or reserved a bit. Despite the fact that there are moments throughout this film that I do enjoy, I think overall the storyline is really weak here. And then killing off Rachel and Michael Myers' mask in this movie is probably one of the most atrocious ones that I've seen. And I do think the pacing is very clunky. And the ending, my God. Yeah, not one that I really appreciate. There's also something that Halloween 5 does that gets on my nerves with the bumbling cops, and that's that there's this sound effect, and it's supposed to be like sort of this comedic tone or approach that it's taking, and I do not like it. I don't know. It's just, what in the hell were they thinking? Coming in at number 11, we have Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, which came out in 1995. I don't think I mentioned for Revenge, but that one came out 1989. So in this one, it takes place 6 years after the events of Revenge. revenge, and Jamie and Michael have been abducted by this druidic-like cult and taken to a compound. In this one, we do see Jamie Lloyd is giving birth to a baby, which in fact is Michael's. With the cults, they're able to control and study the proverbial boogeyman. So where do I start with this one? I put this one actually higher just because as a kid, this one was the only one out of all films to terrify me. Like the opening scene where the nurse helps out Jamie Lloyd, which is played by, I think her name's JC Brandy, because Danielle Harris did not come back for this one, and I do not blame her, terrified me. The way he kills the nurse. I think this one definitely picks up with the violence. It's a lot more gory. So what did I like about this film? I would have to say the first half of the film really kept my attention. The autumnal feel, but also what the hell is going on with Haddonfield? Because in certain scenes, it just looks like a rundown place compared to some of the previous films. Let me know if anybody also kind of caught on to that. I don't know, the neighborhood looks a little janky, like what's going on. Dr. Loomis, of course, because this is Donald Pleasance's last film that he was featured in, which I know that there's a lot of issues with The Curse of Michael Myers because of like reshoots, post-filming, came to be a total mess of a film. Like I've watched the producer's cut, I've watched the theatrical cut, both suck. I'm sorry. But really the ending, the latter half of this film is it's just jarring. It's really something else. Like I see where they're going at with the story, but it's just way too convoluted. There's too many things going on. The fact that we have this sanitarium staff who's wanting to control evil, wanting to control Michael and have this sort of transference of evil that goes to Steven, who like I consider the baby kind of a MacGuffin, because really it's just not really like a big important part of the film. I almost forget that the baby's even there. The editing is messy, for one. Like why the is there a jump scare when Tim goes to give Beth a hug? Like that literally is a jump scare in the movie with the booming sound. And I'm just like, why? Why was that necessary? That is one thing. There's also Jamie's death. There's Michael being subservient to the cult. There's a lot that I could keep going on and on about that I just find it shocking sometimes, even though I really enjoyed certain aspects of this movie. And I do think that there's some really creative shots. I'm not gonna lie. Like when Michael goes to kill one of the Strode family members, it's Deborah, the mom. I really do like the shot before he like axes her. I think it just sucks because this Michael actually has a much more darker and terrifying appearance compared to the previous two films, but it's just lost with all this like mysticism and just unnecessary information. Coming in at number 10, we have 2021's Halloween Kills. So in this one, we do follow the events of Halloween from 2018, where Michael has been trapped in Laurie Strode's home and the house is set ablaze. Now in this one, we do have first responders, so the fire department does go out, and it gives us one of the most iconic scenes. The beginning of this film really is enjoyable. However, I'm not a fan of the story in this one, in particular the fixation with the exploration of mob mentality. To be quite honest, the way in which the characters are written in David Gordon Green's trilogy is just, are the citizens of Haddonfield supposed to be morons? That's how I look at it, because why are they so idiotic? I mean, I get it that bandwagon mentality can be a real thing, but it's just, some of them just take it, it's just so extreme. Like when you watch the movie, like some guy is literally banging his head on the glass. And I don't know, maybe it's just a plot convenience, but also the dialogue, it's like with David Gordon Green's films, like the way in which the characters speak, it's almost like a freaking sitcom. Like, why does everybody have to say something quirky? I don't know. And then Laurie's passive presence in the film, which I get it, she's injured and it allows the other characters to have a moment to shine. Don't get me wrong, this one probably has the most variety when it comes to the kills, and it's on par with the title, so at least it has that going for it. But the addition of everything else, like the inclusion of everything else, it just brings it down so much for me as far as like the continuity, the story of it. But who knows, maybe with time my opinion may change on Halloween Kills. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to number 9. This one starts off the 2.5 out of 5 star ratings, and that is 2007's Halloween, Rob Zombie's Halloween to be specific. This one is a remake in which we explore the backstory of Michael Myers, his troublesome upbringing, his family dynamic, his time at the sanitarium at Smith's Grove, and ultimately when he escapes as an adult and goes to Haddonfield to find his baby sister, Angel Myers, who's also adopted and known as Laurie Strode. Admittedly, when I watched this movie when I was younger, I did not like it. And I was a big fan of Rob Zombie and I love a lot of his films, but for some reason this one just did not stick with me. I don't know if it was just the amount of crass in this film. I will say though, he has a talent for that. He has a talent for making his characters so disgusting. Like, just looking at them, you're like, oh, I can smell them through the screen. And then Michael's family, the way in which that they speak, this one is by far, I have to say, one of the more brutal iterations of Michael Myers. Saying that, I do think Scout Taylor Compton does give a great performance, and she is a highly overlooked Laurie Strode. I think she does great in her role. And I remember when this movie came out, I was so excited that Danielle Harris was coming back. I'm like, oh, great, she's coming back. She's now part of this timeline. Well, the film does choose to explore the psychological inner workings of Michael Myers. I would have to say the first half of the film is kind of tedious to get through. And then the second half, it's pretty much the same thing as the original. So for that reason, yes, I think it's a decent film, but it's not one that I in particular would care to rewatch that often. If I'm going to watch a Halloween movie, I'll probably just stick to the original. Coming in at number 8, we have Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which came out in 2009. This one also has a 2.5 out of 5 stars. And you might be wondering why I have this one ranked higher than 2007's Halloween, but I actually, unlike a lot of people who say that this sequel is terrible, I like the bold choices that are made here. I like that we get to see Laurie Strode in a different light with how chaotic her life is and how unstable she is, even though she has really good people around her still, like her friends, Maya and Harley. She still has Annie, who's still alive. Spoiler alert, not for long. Of course, there's Brad Dourif, who plays Sheriff Brackett. There's a lot of moments within Halloween 2 that are so special to me when I think about it, like Brad Dourif, who plays Sheriff Brackett, who's having the dinner with his daughter, with Annie, and then also with Laurie. So the way that this one starts is like inspiration or homage to 1981's Halloween 2 with the hospital scene. So we get to see Annie and Laurie, who are taken to the hospital and they're being tended to their wounds. My God, it is gory. There's so much blood and there's like a kill in there that's just so violent. And that's one of the nurses, played by Octavia Spencer. You also get to see Caroline Williams in this, which I don't know how I missed that before, but it turns out that this entire sequence, the opening, is a dream. So or I should say a nightmare, because yeah, Laurie Strode has been having like really heavy nightmares. I think with this one, the biggest standout is towards the end when we get to see, again, what I was stating earlier, the transference of evil and how Laurie and Michael are linked together. It kind of also gives the same feel as like with Jamie Lloyd and Michael when she's convulsing. The only thing with this one that kind of takes it a step down, the reason why I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars, is just, again, some of the pacing. It kind of loses my attention, and this is one that I, for some reason, always tend to forget. But then when I do watch it, I'm like, oh yeah, I really enjoy it. It's just, for some reason, it's so forgettable to me. You know, some people are going to say it's probably just an excuse to have his wife, Sherry Moon Zombie, featured in the film. But I do like the inclusion of the white horse and some of the other visuals that Rob Zombie chooses to include when Laurie Strode is having these nightmares or these visions. How could I forget Dr. Loomis in this film? Watching this movie, it was entertaining watching him just be a little prima donna, but it was so funny and so worth it once Sheriff Brackett just punched the hell out of him, because it was well deserved. Coming in at number 7 with 2.5 stars out of 5 as well is 2018's Halloween. So this one is, of course, the H40 timeline that kicks it off. This one takes place literally 40 years after the events of 1978's Halloween. And in this one, we do get to follow Laurie Strode, who's a survivalist who has been prepping and anticipating the day that Michael Myers will be transferred. In this one, the way it starts, we do follow two podcasters, these investigative journalists who are just trying to find further insight into Michael Myers. Podcasters providing a bit of exposition over the past 40 years with the new doctor, Dr. Sartain, who's introduced, who's the anti-Loomis. And while I view the podcasters as filler or means to move the plot along, I do find it interesting once they are killed because it makes me think of Halloween 4 and Halloween H2O. So you can correct me if I'm mistaken on that, but it does seem like David Gordon Green is paying homage to other films. The other films that aren't part of this timeline specifically. This one also has one of the best shots of the entire franchise once we do follow Michael, who's out on the streets of Haddonfield, and there's all these trick-or-treaters, and it just gets you in like the Halloween feel of everything. It's the start of his reign of terror as he's about to go on his killing spree. Again, in retrospect, now that I think about it, David Gordon Green's trilogy does offer quite a variety when it comes to the kills, so I may have judged it pretty harshly in the past. So I can admit when I'm wrong, I'm not saying that they're perfect, but I can admit that I was pretty harsh with them. I do find it fascinating now that I'm thinking about it, how Halloween Kills chooses to focus on mob mentality, while 2018's Halloween focuses more on like how a traumatic event can really take a toll on an individual. But not only that, it chooses to focus on the familial drama and familial aspects with Laurie Strode and her daughter Karen and Karen's upbringing, and also Allison, the granddaughter, and how she's keeping everything afloat. Rewatching this trilogy, I wasn't really a fan of Allison, but now that I think about it, I was like, she is pretty awesome, not gonna lie. Even putting it into perspective now, like thinking about someone's ordeal, like the trauma that they experience, but meanwhile everyone around them has kind of moved on or has forgotten about this so-called boogeyman. It's really sad. I didn't even consider that. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to number 6. We're getting down to the last few. This one's gonna shock you guys. It's 2022's Halloween Ends. Yeah, I know. I had this on my worst for 2022, even though I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. So I'm like, what's going on? I don't know. What was going on with 2022 me? I rewatched this film, and I have to say, I really, really enjoy the themes that this one is choosing to explore. Now, do I think it fully commits and really drives it home with what it's trying to convey? No, but for what it's worth, I'm like, wow, I misjudged this movie so much. It's heavy on the romance because we do follow. So let me just. Okay, so this one does take place 4 years after Halloween Kills, and Laurie Strode is living with her granddaughter. Allison is a nurse, and Laurie is writing her memoir. Karen, at the end of the film, spoiler, was killed of Halloween Kills. And this one, we're introduced to a new character named Corey Cunningham, who accidentally kills a boy and basically becomes the town pariah. And later on gets in cahoots with Michael Myers, also dating Allison. So it's just like this whole drama going on. Corey is like the centerpiece of this film. I will say I do like the way this movie chooses to explore the way evil never actually dies. It just changes its shape. I did compare Michael Myers to Ratma because he was in the sewers. I do remember that, but now that I think about it, I'm sorry, I'm still laughing because him gyrating, him convulsing, he's overcome with the power after killing a man. If I remember correctly, when I did my review of Halloween Ends, which I deleted because I found certain things with my review cringy, I do think I stated that there were merits to the film. It wasn't a total hate train, even though it might appear that way. I did put it on the worst for whatever reason. I don't remember why. But I found myself getting really invested and enjoying it upon my recent rewatch. Even the kills, some that are really brutal that I had forgotten about. And even the ending, it's kind of brought some sort of peace. Like when I think about it, I was like, oh, they finally have that closure. So there is closure there. Color me shocked. I might get some eye rolls, especially from like the really big horror nerds who love the Halloween franchise. Screw it. Yeah, I like Halloween Ends. That brutality, man. Michael going through the industrial shredder. Coming in at number 5, we have Halloween H2O 20 Years Later, which came out in 1998. So this one is part of the Laurie Strode timeline. So Halloween, Halloween 2, and then it jumps to Halloween H2O and then Resurrection. After the events of Halloween 2, Laurie Strode basically goes into hiding, and in this film, we learn that she is the principal of this very illustrious school called Hillcrest Academy. And while being in hiding, we do learn that she has changed her name to Carrie Tate. There's so many moments within this movie that I enjoy. The beginning, of course, with the reintroduction of Marion Chambers and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, the neighbor. And by no means do I think this movie is perfect, because I do see its flaws. The mask, don't get me started on the mask. Also, the fact that the film is pretty tamed when it comes to its violence. I will say this movie is definitely a product of its time, but I can overlook so much. One of the standout moments for me within this film is when Michael is out of Laurie's view, hiding from her. And they're playing this sort of cat and mouse game, and he begins to descend down. Like he's lifting his entire body up with one arm, but he's just descending down. Whoever came up with that idea, genius. But I personally enjoy this version of Laurie Strode the most, because this is her redemption arc. This is her coming back, being stronger than ever and battling it out with Michael Myers. Also her as the headmistress of the school discussing Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which makes me also think of the first film, talking about Costain and Samuels, like the outlook on fate and how fate is like an element. It's just a trope that I really enjoy seeing every time that they're having some type of philosophical conversation. Coming in at number 4, we have Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which came out in 1982. So this one basically follows a cult under the pretense that it's a mask-making Halloween company, when their intentions are really to infect the minds of the children around the globe, and quite literally through a broadcast, the jingle that I won't be able to get out of my head. At the top of it all, we do have Connell Cochran, who is strategizing to make sure everything goes according to plan, to the point where he even has his employee included with his family, sort of going through this trial before it goes to the final stages of basically committing a mass murder. A mass murder involving an ancient Celtic ritual because of a boulder that was stolen from Stonehenge. And now they're implanted, basically these chips that are going into these shamrock masks. It's just, when I think about the plot of this film, it's so zany, but it works. It is one of the most enjoyable watches from the entire franchise. I have to say, even the special effects, like the lady who is messing with the chip and then her face afterwards, like aside from the obvious antagonists of the film, we do have our protagonists, Dr. Dan Chalice and Ellie Grimbridge, who make their way into the factory to basically uncover and expose what's really happening with the company. Now, what I like about this film is how dark it is, how grim it is. At the end of the film, sorry, spoiler, I'm just going to mention it, when Dr. Dan Chalice is attempting to have all these stations turn off the programming, and it just, I guess you can infer that he failed and everybody is dead. But I live by this movie. I honestly love the Halloween feel of it. If you do have the chance today on Halloween, please, if there's one movie, please do watch Season of the Witch. I think you guys already saw my mom got me this witch, which I was really happy with. Oh man, I know that Silver Shamrock tune is going to be stuck in my head now. Oh, and also, Halloween Kills did a great job of including Season of the Witch, the mask. I totally forgot to even mention that, but yeah. Another positive with Kills. At number 3, we have Halloween 2, which came out in 1981. So this one follows up with the events of 1978's Halloween, in which we get to see the aftermath of all the murders and Laurie Strode being taken away, transported via an ambulance to the Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. Now, I especially love the hospital setting of this film. In the beginning, when we get introduced to Mr. Sandman playing, as we get a recap of the events that have taken place, I think what I really enjoy about Halloween 2 is its pacing, that there is a lot more gore and violence as opposed to Halloween 1970. The only downside to this movie would have to be the mask. It's a bit annoying to look at, but it's not the worst. I can kind of, overlook it. I mean, I still want to mention it. I personally have a really fun time watching this one because of the ending where there's the massive explosion and Michael is still walking through the fire, being burned alive. This one is the one where you get to learn that Laurie Strode is related to Michael Myers. But yeah, Halloween 2 is awesome. That is all. Next, we have 1988's Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. So in this one, we do follow the events of Halloween 2 after the fire, where Michael is now comatose or has been comatose. And it's not until it's revealed that he has a niece who's alive, Jamie Lloyd, who's orphaned. She's the daughter of Laurie Strode. So in this timeline, it's revealed that it's stated that Laurie had died in a car accident. So of course, Michael goes after his niece. I was going to say, I think this is one of the ones where the community comes together, bands together to defeat Michael. So maybe that was an inspiration for Kills. I'm not certain, but it has a similar feel, not on the same sort of macro scale as Kills does. This one can be a lot of fun, and I remember having a lot of fond memories growing up as a kid and watching this every time that it was shown on the AMC channel, every year that they would do a Halloween marathon. And vividly, I just think of the scene where Rachel and Jamie, they're on the roof trying to escape Michael. And of course, we get great performances from Danielle Harris as well as Donald Pleasance. This is actually one of my favorite performances from Donald Pleasance. I'm also thinking of the old religious man who picks up Dr. Loomis, because I think that was a scene that was played quite heavily on the AMC channel. And at number 1, we have 1978's Halloween. Are you surprised? This one is, in fact, one of my absolute favorite slasher films. I think this one is the one that put slasher films on the map and influenced other films that later came to be, like A Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. It is, of course, an influential film, and I think also an independently made film at that. I think this one had a budget of around $300,000, and it was shot in 20 days or 25 days. Absolutely adore this film. The opening sequence, the way it's shot. This one always fascinates me because you see a young Michael Myers who has killed his sister Judith, and his parents remove his mask. He's just looking like blank. There's just a blank expression. So I kind of like that, not having those extra details and not knowing too much other than he's evil incarnate. I think to myself, I wonder if John Carpenter and Deborah Hill really thought like that this film was going to be as successful as it turned out to be. Then there's the infamous closet scene. There's just so many iconic moments within this movie that I love. This is my ranking and how I'd structure all 13 films. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you rank all these films. And let me know what your plans are if you're doing anything fun for Halloween. But yeah. Bye guys. Have a good night.